Hello and welcome to the Story Behind the Stories, your weekly look at the pages of the Neepawa Banner Press. Thank you very much for taking a little bit of your time and spending it here with us on NACTV. I'm Eoin Devereux with the Banner Press, welcoming you almost as always to the program, and I'm joined this week by publisher Ken Waddell. Ken, good to have you here this week.
Oh, good. Thanks for asking me. I appreciate being here.
Well, we need a little bit of opinion and hearsay and whatnot, and a little bit of education on a few of the things that we're going to be talking about on this week's edition. And we need, quite honestly, I'll be straight with you. If you're a consistent viewer of the show, you know what, I'm not going to BS you on any of these things. We do need to fill a little bit of time here, because it's only going to be 12 pages in this week's edition of the Banner Press. Not one of our best weeks, but considering what we came off of last week, a tremendous Remembrance Day section and jam-packed with valuable and very significant information for Neepawa and surrounding area, we're allowed to have a slight stinker every once in a while. And the thing is, this one isn't even that much of a stinker, I'll be honest with you on that, because the front page is a valuable story and one I think heading into the holidays you should be paying attention to. And it's in regard to the Neepawa Salvation Army, Neepawa Community Services beginning their annual hamper program. This is one of those stories we write each and every year, and you try and do it in a new way, in a creative way. But I would love, quite honestly, to never have to write this story again for the pure and simple fact that we don't need to institute the hamper program because everybody has the means to be able to celebrate a Merry Christmas. It's a little bit of a tirade I'm going off on. Maybe I should give you a little bit of background first if you're new to the show. The hamper program is something that's put on each and every year by the Neepawa Salvation Army Community Services Club. It's something that puts out a little bit of money, a little bit of support to families that maybe don't have the means to be able to have a Merry Christmas. Since 2020, they've done it almost exclusively in terms of gift cards that they give out to certain families that are part of it to be able to go out and buy what they need to make sure that they have a good holiday season, be it for turkey or stuffing or any of those things, or maybe fuel to put in their vehicle to go to a family member's and be able to celebrate Christmas there. They changed it in 2020 because of the pandemic, obviously, but as well, they've kept it changed in terms of the gift cards now, just for the sheer simple fact that so many people are involved in the hamper program now that it takes up too much space. To be able to make all those hampers for about 140 different families, it just takes up more space than they have to deal with right now, which is, in my opinion, Ken, it's a darn shame. But according to Amanda Nightingale, that's the reality of it. It's something that is growing on a yearly basis.
Yes, I've noticed that, and certainly a trend that's continuing. And as you say, it is a little disturbing that people aren't able to make ends meet there, and it's sad. But I am glad that we have this as a backup for them, so that they can, celebrate Christmas with their family and get some proper nutrition. And of course, with the food bank program throughout the year, that's a safety net that's important to have in a community. Because you never know. Some people, people just sometimes never know when they're going to need it. And
Yep.
And it's not up to us to question. It's up to us to reach out and provide, because there's some of us can afford to do that. And everybody does a little bit. It's all good.
Yep, exactly. And again, it's wonderful to see at this time of year the amount of support that comes rolling in to the Salvation Army and to the food bank. It's wonderful to see all the different businesses and individuals and organizations step up in this manner. Amanda Nightingale is very thankful for all the businesses that are involved as well, because to go along with the hamper program, there's also a bit of a distribution of toys for all the youngsters. They set up almost like a toy store where the parents are able to come in and pick and choose the toy that they think their youngster is going to enjoy the most. Because nobody knows their kids better than parents. So it's better to give them the option to be able to do something like that. So there are several different businesses and companies that have stepped up and supported that. That's in this week's story as well. If you want to find out a little bit more, you can find it in this week's edition of the Banner Press. And we're going to actually, interestingly enough, I'm going to be covering a lot of the Salvation Army's endeavors over the next couple of weeks because there's so many different things that are going on. Just before we actually came on air here, I was finishing off the final details of an event that's being put on right now as we are recording over at the Neepawa Curling Club. It's called the Fund Spiel. You're going to see more information on that in next week's edition of the Banner Press. It's organized by Neepawa Gladstone Co-op. I'm really glad I was able to go down there and get some pictures and get some information on it. And I'm really looking forward to being able to share that with you in next week's edition of the newspaper. But don't worry, you can still learn a little bit about the Salvation Army and about the need in Neepawa in this week's edition. You can find the story on page 1 of this week's paper. It carries over onto page 7, so hopefully you'll take a moment or two of your time and check it out and think about those that are in need during the holiday season. Let's shift over to some more municipal dynamics. On page 2 of this week's edition, we've got a few pictures for you, one or two of which is actually some road work that has finally been completed. We've talked many a time on the program about the renovations to a block on Hamilton Street that had been planned for this year. They had to be postponed, though, for a time when the Brandon 18th Street upgrades were announced. Fortunately, they were able to get fit into this year, though, and the road on Hamilton Street, where the former Banner building is actually located, is looking pretty good now, Ken.
Yeah, it sure is, and it was only one of the 2 roads that the blocks of the town wanted to get done. They wanted to get the one done between the CIBC and Bruce Brothers, and it's like a shelled out crater, that street, but as was Hamilton Street before they dug it out. And they dug it out, they dug it down a couple of feet, put in ground cloth, lots of clean sand and gravel, and packed it down and put down the pavement. Unfortunately, we all know what's coming.
Uh-huh.
Something happened somehow with a water line or surface drainage, and one of the businesses, in fact, they're in the building that the Neepawa Banner Press used to be in, and the owner phoned me last Saturday and said, "Did you ever have water in the basement over in the northeast corner?" I said, "No." I said, "Is the sump pump working?" "Yes." And I haven't checked back today. I see they've kind of cleaned up. After that, they had to dig down 8 feet, put in a big crib, suck out all the mud, cut out a chunk of the brand new street, a small chunk, but a chunk of the brand new street, and the sidewalk. And I don't know if they found the trouble there or if they found the trouble somewhere else, but it wasn't a lot of water, but 1.5 inches of water in your basement is a problem.
Yep.
Especially on the carpeted floor.
Mm-hmm.
So oh my goodness. I thought, for once, can we not have a street finished and paved and left alone for a while before they dig it up? So far, they haven't dug up the one in front of KK2. That was done last year.
Right.
No, it still hasn't been dug up yet, so we're good. We're good on that one.
Well, again, fortunately, a good portion of that road is still brand spanking new now, and it's looking pretty darn good. So if you want to see, if you're not driving and not in Neepawa, but you want to see how it looks, you can check it out on page 2 of this week's edition of the newspaper. Quick aside as well, also on the page 2, just on the spot little bit of news that we had there. There was a slight accident over at the Neepawa Esso on the 31st, if I remember correctly. Just a little sort of identification there. We put it on there. Just to let you know, just these types of on-the-spot things there, you might be curious as yourself is why are you reporting this? What's the big deal? Well, again, news is news, whether it's good news, whether it's bad news, whether you think it's important or whether you don't think it's important. Something that's not important to you might be significant to someone else. So we report the news as we see it, and we try to be as respectful in the reporting of that news as we possibly can. We're not here to single out people in terms of stuff, unless they deserve to be singled out. If you are a criminal, if you do criminal activity, you're going to be called a criminal in the newspaper. This is not in any way, shape, or form that. They don't sort of put 1 and 1 and try and turn it into 3. No, but if we see spot news, we're going to report on it. There's been many a time over the years where vehicles in Neepawa have jumped the curb and rammed into buildings. It seems like it's something that was happening in Neepawa, Ken, for the longest time, every about 16 months.
Yeah.
And we'd usually take the picture and we'd put it in the paper, just a little human interest type thing. That's what this one is as well, a little human interest there. Fortunately, no one was hurt. We're not trying to single people out here. We're not trying to besmirch people here, but we are trying to share the news. When somebody comes driving into a certain area and sees everything's busted to hell, they might ask themselves, what the heck happened? And, well, we answered that question. So,
yeah, and the news is news, and we, based on your experience and good judgment, you blanked out the license plate. So if anybody was worried about that, I think that was the right thing to do. But sometimes people get upset about getting their name or their something about them in the paper. But if it's in the middle of a news thing, well, that's what we try and do. And we miss stuff. I mean, we get it. I get it. We miss lots of stuff. So you can't use the excuse, well, why'd you put me in, but you didn't put in this other guy? Well, we maybe didn't know about the other guy. Mm-hmm. We can't be everywhere all the time. But anyway, it was unfortunate. You talk about driving into buildings. We're sitting here in the Neepawa Banner Press building, and it's been hit twice in my memory, maybe 3 times. It was hit just before we bought the building.
Yep.
And we had bricks and dust and plaster all over the place downstairs. And then it was hit again. It wasn't near as bad the second time.
Yep.
But
and then, of course, there was that time when we were in the old Banner building over on Hamilton, where just right next to the income tax place, they jumped the curb and hit the side of the dollar store with more that one time as well. Right. Remember that one?
They were shopping for bargains, and they went in the hard way.
And then, of course, there was the most recent one is when they jumped the curb and hit the side of the giant tiger. So 1, 2, that's 4 in the last maybe, 7 years where that's happened?
Yeah, it can happen easily, and it's unfortunate. But anyway.
And we had all those pictures in the edition of the Banner Press.
Right.
We had all those pictures in there. We're not trying to jam anybody up here. We're not trying to get anybody into trouble here, but we are trying to inform the masses in terms of that type of stuff.
Well, I'll tell you another one that's even better than that, and that is that many years ago, we used to have when there was court held here in Neepawa, we used to cover the court report.
Yep.
And a person who was very close to me was found guilty, and their name went in the paper. Mm-hmm. Maybe much to their surprise, but I could have kept it out. And another one a little further back than that, I had a few calls over the years. This is so-and-so. How much is it going to cost me to keep my name out of the paper? Didn't do that either.
Yeah. But again, in terms of the auto accidents, we never put people's names in the paper, and we're not going to start doing that.
Yeah. Anyway.
All right, let's shift gears. We're going to talk a little bit about some editorial pages here right now. We're going to talk a little bit about this week's editorial. And Ken, you also want to stress a little bit about a previous one you talked about. But let's start off with this week's edition of right in the center there. You came up with a few perspectives on the medical system in Manitoba and some of your, obvious issues with it. And when I say obvious, I mean obvious to everyone who's had to deal with it.
Yeah. Well, the first thing I said in the column, and I will repeat here, is that the medical system in Manitoba is very good, especially for emergencies and for acute care. In the last 5 years, I guess, maybe or so, both my wife and I have been hospitalized several times. Chris twice with cancer. Myself with I think it was cancer. Then I was in this hospital in the United States too, so I got something there to compare with. But for the most part, very good. In fact, I was in the hospital this morning for a test in Brandon. Went smooth as could be. Just boom, 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 done. Thank you very much. Everybody was pleasant. But my point in the column is that the Manitoba Health and Shared Health, the politicians and the bureaucrats are just as bad. They will look at a situation, no, we don't need to do that much. Well, they're 35 weeks behind right now on CAT scans, and they're telling us they don't need a CAT scan in Neepawa's hospital. There isn't the need for it. Well, that's obvious nonsense. They're a year behind, I found out today, in MRIs, except for emergencies. I mean, in emergency, you get an MRI on a short notice. But for preventative or longer term diagnostic, hip replacements, all those kind of things, they're a year behind. Back in the day when I was mayor in Neepawa, in my first term, they announced a new care home for Neepawa. We had 120 beds at the time in the old Eastview Lodge. They said, we're going to build you a new care home. Well, after they got us on the hook and then agreeing that we would come up with 10% of the cost, well, we're only going to do 100 beds. Big mistake. Oh, and by the way, when we're done with the old home, I was personally promised that when the last resident of Eastview Lodge is wheeled down the ramp to go to Country Meadows, that was before they even had a name for the new one, they said, we'll hand you, Mr. Mayor, the keys so that your town can redevelop this property for housing. Didn't happen. Balked and balked and balked until finally they weren't maintaining it properly. Water pipes froze, building went to hell in a handbasket, and it was torn down as a hazard. Those are some of the promises. Now, supposed to be a 70-bed hospital or 75 beds for Neepawa. At the public meeting, they said we're going to open 30 to start with. Like, what the hell? Sorry. 30. But we're supposed to be a regional hospital. A district hospital now with 35 beds, going to become a regional hospital with 30 beds. It's insane. It's absolute insane. And there's things that the government and the bureaucrats could do differently. I'm convinced of that. So I bring some of that stuff out in the column. And then the last thing I bring out is that we have got, we're short of doctors. Well, I have yet to see a study that says we're educating this many doctors, we're losing this many doctors, deaths, retirements, leaving the province, whatever, and we need this many more. So instead of educating, say they're doing 80 doctors, why aren't we doing 120 doctors? Why not? And why aren't we accelerating the accreditation of people who come from other countries who are close to or do have medical doctor status in the countries they come from?
Yeah.
And it's not as if it's, well, I'll show you how stupid things are. There was a retired doctor in Neepawa who offered, this is quite a few years ago, offered to go back to work. He would do 3 mornings a week. He said, if I screwed up, he says, there are 5 other doctors or 2 other doctors just down the hall. He said, but I would be able to see 20 patients times 3, 60 patients a week. They would not relicense him. And this man had 40 years medical experience. That's how stupid the bureaucracy can become. End of rant. Sorry. The bureaucracy, some of the bureaucrats should not be in the position that they're in, and some of the politicians shouldn't be in the position they're in either.
Well, again, it comes down to, from the sounds of it, a lot of communities ended up getting handcuffed when they could do something on their own. They could create some opportunities on their own.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, as Ken said, government bureaucracy seems to step in the way. In terms of the doctor starting up again, I can understand your thought process on that, but again, it could be a concept of how long was this gentleman retired? How long was this gentleman at the game?
About 3 years, but he passed his license to go back in, and they still wouldn't accredit him.
Okay, so he had passed his license then, because I was wondering, because 3 years in medical techniques can go a long way now, but if he passed, as you said, then where's the issue? Where's the problem with that? There isn't one, unless you want to create one, and that's what they decided to do.
Yeah.
There's a lot of valuable points actually in there that I think we all can agree on, for the most part, here in Manitoba. A more recent edition, though, of your editorials, apparently people didn't quite agree on it. I don't know whether they missed a couple words in there. You know, they put some words in there that weren't in there, but you wanted to clarify something that occurred in your November 1st edition of Right in the Center.
I'd love to clarify that. I really would. Because in it I said, who's going to win the U.S. election? And I said, I don't know. And I didn't. But I said, what I do know is that if Donald Trump is elected, it will be because people are sick of the stands taken by the Democrats who are shamelessly backed by the majority of the media and the entertainment industry. Well, lo and behold, on Tuesday night, the elections results poured in. And I stayed up, I got back up out of bed and went and listened to it all as it unfolded. And now, day election plus one, election day plus two, all the pundits are saying the Democrats didn't do this, the Democrats didn't do that. The Democrats, all they did was, and I'm not saying this is all true, but this is what the pundits are all saying now, and Democrat pundits at that.
Right.
We didn't do it right. We didn't use social media enough. We went door to door too much. We didn't have enough time. They certainly had enough money. They spent $107 billion, $1 billion probably, in 107 days.
Yeah.
I think it was about 10 million a day. 10 million a day on the campaign.
Well, again, I think part of it is, and the reason we bring this up is because we get letters and we get comments and we get people getting in touch with us with our opinions, sometimes positive, sometimes negative. And there was an individual who got in touch with us and disagreed with your column. We didn't print the letter. We asked if we could get permission. They decided, no, we don't want it to be printed. And that is their prerogative. That is your prerogative. We want that interaction with us. We would like to be able to engage in the conversation. We'd like to do it in a public manner. But if you don't want to, that's fine. That's fine. So, and Ken, I think part of the problem they had with it as well is maybe there were allusions to Trump being smart. And actually, even before we went to print, I made a suggestion on that. I don't think, in terms of the broad definition, Trump is smart. I don't think he's a complete moron, but I don't think he's smart. But I think he's smart at marketing himself. He is one of the most intelligent individuals in the world, I genuinely believe, in terms of marketing the concept of Trump, the aura of Trump for the longest time. That's what won him the election the first time. And to a degree, I think that's what won him. Actually, can you do it too first so Ken's in the shot as well? I think this works best if it's just both of us in the shot here. So Ken, I want to engage with you on this here. That's why I think he ended up winning this election, is because he's so smart at marketing his own concept. But as you said as well, the Democrats are so bad at not at doing it. The Democrats didn't have a message. Their message was, we're not Trump. And in American politics, that's not enough anymore.
They should have said Kamala Harris is not Biden.
Yes, exactly, yes.
And she was challenged on that and said she wouldn't do anything different.
Yeah.
It's very difficult. I mean, I've been involved in politics a long time. And if you try to run from the change agent point of view, and you've been in office for a term or two terms, you're in deep trouble.
Yep. And the stupid thing about this is when you look at the American economic system right now, they keep talking about, oh, we're in a near recession. We don't have as much money in the bank as we did 4 years ago. But I have family that live in the United States of America right now. I find out what the gas prices are up there. I find out what the price of a 12-pack of Coke is there. It's still cheaper in America, where things are off the rails apparently, than it is here in Canada. We are much worse off in Canada right now in terms of an economic situation in the United States. So what does that mean for our election coming up this time next year?
Well, that's a good point. And two people were pretty upset when they were saying I was promoting Trump. I was not promoting Trump. I said if he won, it would be because the Democrats hadn't done a good enough job of running against him.
Yeah. And again, that is the amazing thing about this election. Ken said he didn't know who was going to win. And I've said for the last month or so, it would shock me if Trump didn't win. I would be genuinely surprised if Kamala Harris won. What shocked me was that the fact that the Senate race was so one-sided for the Republicans, and that the House of Representatives is so far so one-sided for the Republicans. That is a complete and utter indictment of the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party in the United States needs to take a long look, because yes, not all voters for Trump are racist or sexist or misogynist. There are some. There are a few. I think the majority of racists and the majority of misogynists probably ended up voting for Trump, but not all of them. There was still a good portion of just Americans tired of seeing less money in their wallet and less money in their purse at the end of the week than they saw 4 years ago. And the fact that most of the Democratic talking points weren't, how are we going to fix that to you? I think that came back and bit them on the butt. Anyone who knows the show and watches the show on a consistent basis knows I state myself as a fiscal conservative on 90% of the things, but a social liberal on 90% of the other things. And I think that version of the voter is not represented in the United States at all. It is an all or nothing mindset down there right now. And somebody who in the most part is kind of in the middle, which I think I'm a good representative of that, is completely unheard. And when you're unheard, you're going to start yelling eventually. And this election, in my opinion, Ken, was loud and clear.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Rural and middle class and small town America just rose up and said, we've had enough.
Yeah.
And that's what happened.
Yeah.
Anyway, we got a couple more things we're supposed to cover.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Let's get back to some local news. I covered the Slasher Showdown last weekend. It's the annual hockey tournament for the NACI Tigers. They held the event. I've got a bunch of pictures from that, as well as a few score results. It's wonderful to see everybody come together like that each and every year and turn that event into an annual success. It really does mean a lot to have so many different teams from outside our catchment area come into Neepawa, see what we are all about, and sort of come here and have some fun. So hopefully you'll be able to check that out. One other thing as well is the Farmers Home Opener. I know we talk a whole heck of a lot about the Neepawa Titans on this program, and a fair amount as well about the Neepawa Tigers hockey team. We wish we could talk about every high school sport, but there's only so many hours in the day. So if you have any story suggestions or pictures or information, always remember to send it our way. I wish I could be there and cover every single one of those events. But there's only 24 hours in a day, and I'm getting older, and my knees aren't as good as they used to be. So help a brother out. You know?
But I think Owen's making the point very well that we should let it be known that if you have pictures or stories that you want in the paper, please submit them. We can sometimes lighten up the pictures or make them a little bigger or whatever if they're good quality. High quality, and we can always change the story a little bit, phone you up and ask for clarification, but we can't be everywhere. We don't get to nearly all the things in our coverage area. I mean, with the three papers now, we're 150 miles from one side to the other, and we're about 120 miles north to south. So it's just, we can't do it all.
Yep.
We can do more if you send us the stuff.
Oh, and to get back on actual point, Farmers ended up winning their home opener. I always said as well, the Tiger Hills Hockey League is a great, exciting level of hockey. I wish more people in Neepawa would go out and support them. They ended up winning their home opener against the McGregor Wild. So I enjoyed immensely. It's great to see, and hopefully you'll be able to support them in some way, shape, or form throughout the season. Well, that pretty much covers what we had on this week's edition of the program. Like I said, it was a short paper. Next week, we're already jam-packed. We got more stuff in next week's paper already than what we had in all of this week. So that's going to make next week's program a pretty jam-packed one. But if you still have any story suggestions or ideas for us, we still do appreciate it. You can always give us a call over at 476-3401, or you can send us an email over at news@neepawabanner.com. That's what happened with the people who had thoughts on Ken's column. That's what happened on some of the pictures we shared. They got in touch with us there, and we do appreciate it. We might not always agree, but we do appreciate it. We want to hear concerning and differing opinions on all of our stuff or story ideas. That's how a local community paper thrives, is this type of engagement. So we always appreciate that, and we appreciate you. So again, Ken, thank you for taking a little bit of time this week to run us through the paper.
Good to be here.
And we thank you, as always, for being a loyal and consistent viewer of the story behind the story and a loyal and consistent reader. hopefully you're going to have a wonderful weekend. Thank you.